Mickey Mouse might be one of the most recognizable characters in the world, but would you believe he's had over a dozen different designs since 1928? From his barefoot beginnings in Plain Crazy to the redefined Sorcerer's Apprentice to the slick 3D Mickey from Clubhouse, he's constantly evolved to match the times, the technology, and the tastes of each new generation. Hi, I'm Dennis, and this is West of Neverland, where we explore the forgotten corners and behind-the-scenes stories of classic Disney animation. Today, we're taking a deep dive into every major redesign Mickey Mouse has ever had, what changed, why it changed, and how it shaped the future of the character. Mickey's design changes aren't just cosmetic, they reflect the switch to color, the invention of new animation tools, and the evolving role Mickey played over the decades. Let's rewind to where it all began. Before Steamboat Willie ever hit theaters, there was Plain Crazy, the actual first Mickey Mouse cartoon ever animated. In this earliest version, Mickey has no gloves, no shoes, and a scrappy rubber hose look. His overall design was kept simple so it could be animated quickly and expressively. In fact, most of this short was animated by Ub Iwerks alone, and he worked at a staggering pace. At one point during production, he completed 700 drawings in a single day. One detail worth noting is Mickey Mouse's eyes. Unlike later shorts where things get a little more ambiguous, Plain Crazy gives Mickey clearer outlines around the whites of his eyes. It's more obvious that the large white area above his nose is actually his eyes, not just a blank face with dot pupils. This rough around the edges Mickey might not have been polished, but he had personality in spades, and it's where the legend really began. Steamboat Willie might not have been the first Mickey cartoon created, but it was the first one released, and the one that introduced him to the world. Design-wise, this is where Mickey's look really starts to settle in. He's still missing gloves, and he has that rubber hose animation style, but the animation here is cleaner and more confident, and his ears maintain that iconic circular shape when his head turns. At a glance, it might look like he just has small black dots for pupils floating in white space, but that whole white area is actually the full shape of his eyes. In black and white, this works well. His face, mouth, and eyes are all the same white tone, so nothing feels out of place. But this look for his eyes would eventually create problems when color comes into the picture. For now, though, this is the Mickey that audiences fell in love with, playful, mischievous, and full of energy. In the Opry House, we get another subtle but lasting change to Mickey's look, one that would stick with him for the rest of his career: gloves. Early in the short, Mickey takes the stage and begins performing a lively piano routine. As part of the act, he pulls on a pair of white gloves. But unlike a costume piece meant only for that scene, the gloves stay on permanently. From here on out, gloves became a standard part of Mickey's design. The reasoning was practical. In black and white animation, Mickey's hands could easily get lost against his black body. Adding gloves gave his hand movements clarity and emphasis. It also gave animators more flexibility in showing finger articulation and character personality. Just a few months later, in The Carnival Kid, Mickey's eyes go through another interesting evolution. This short, often remembered as the one where Mickey speaks his first words. Hot dog! Hot dog! But from a design perspective, it introduces two new features. First, his pupils now have pie-slice cutouts, those little triangular highlights that give him a more reflective look. Second, there's a thin line above each eye that appears near his forehead. Some viewers mistake these for eyebrows, but they don't move like eyebrows would. Instead, they seem to function more like eyelids, revealing how large Mickey's eyes actually are. Together, these subtle additions add more emotion and personality to Mickey's face. And it's a step toward a more expressive, flexible character that he would become in the 1930s. By the time the band concert was released in 1935, Mickey had already become a star for 7 years. But this short marked a major milestone in his visual evolution. It was the first Mickey Mouse cartoon in full color. Technicolor had been available to Disney since Flowers and Trees debuted in 1932, but the process was incredibly expensive. As a result, the studio had to be selective about which series made the leap to color. The silly symphonies, often experimental and music-driven, were prioritized to showcase the new technology. Meanwhile, Mickey Mouse cartoons remained in black and white, in part because they didn't need color. Mickey was still wildly popular, and his black and white outings still continued to draw big audiences. But the band concert changed that. It was a big, bold production with rich Technicolor visuals that showed just how vibrant the Mickey Mouse series could be. Mickey wore a bright red bandleader's coat, Goofy with a green hat that popped off the screen, and Donald Duck, still a relatively new character, stood out in his blue sailor suit. This short also solidified Mickey's design and color. His face remained white, preserving the clarity of his black eyes. It was a major step toward the modern Mickey, and audiences loved it. In fact, the band concert was such a standout that it's still considered one of Mickey's greatest performances. By the time The Lonesome Ghosts premiered in December of 1937, just days after the release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Mickey's design had taken another subtle but important turn. In this short, Mickey was given one of the most flesh-colored faces he'd ever had, and that change brought an unintended side effect. His eyes suddenly looked strange. In earlier shorts, like the band concert, it was still Mickey's pupils that moved around inside a much larger white eye area. Both of his eyes filled the space above his nose. You can actually see his pupils drift far up to one side of his head when he looks in extreme directions, making it obvious how big those eye shapes really were. But in Lonesome Ghosts, with the flesh-colored face, that illusion fell apart. Mickey's face now looked like the upper part above his nose was actually his skin, not the whites of his eyes. Mickey's eyes looked more fixed in one place, and the pupils, now sitting in a skin-toned face, began to resemble tiny, standalone black dot eyes. This shift made him seem more beady-eyed rather than the expressive and dynamic character audiences were used to. This growing confusion was especially apparent next to the characters like Goofy and Donald Duck, who had much more clearly defined eyes with visible whites and outlines. Mickey, by comparison, was starting to feel a little outdated and less emotionally readable. In 1939, Mickey Mouse underwent one of his most significant makeovers. Animator Fred Moore, already known for shaping Disney's signature animation style, reimagined Mickey with a softer, more appealing look. The redesign first appeared in Mickey's Surprise Party, a short made for the 1939 Golden Gate International Exposition that was sponsored by Nabisco. This version of Mickey introduced several major updates: a more pear-shaped body, a flesh-colored face, and most importantly, a brand new eye design. Gone were the ambiguous black dot eyes. In their place were clearly defined whites with black pupils that could move more independently, allowing for a far greater emotional expression. This change helped modernize Mickey's appearance and bring him closer in line with Disney's increasingly sophisticated animation style. Later that same year, the new look made its theatrical debut in The Pointer, which many fans today recognize as the turning point in Mickey's design history. Just before this transition, the final short to feature Mickey's old black dot eye design was Society Dog Show, also released in 1939. Comparing the two makes the evolution instantly clear. Mickey had finally matured into the leading man Walt Disney always envisioned. While the redesign had already premiered in several shorts, many assumed it was created specifically for Fantasia, which had been in production since the mid-1930s. In truth, Mickey's updated look premiered earlier due to Fantasia's lengthy production timeline. But it was in The Sorcerer's Apprentice that this new design truly cemented his place in Disney history, bringing the character new emotional depth and visual sophistication. The Little Whirlwind introduced a bold change to Mickey's design: dimensional ears. For the first time, Mickey's traditionally flat, always facing forward, circular ears were given depth and volume. This meant that as his head turned, so did his ears, bringing him closer to a three-dimensional character. This new look made Mickey feel more grounded in space, aligning him more visually with his surroundings and giving him a more modern and polished feel. The dimensional ears continued through several shorts, including Mickey's Birthday Party, but never quite stuck with audiences or animators. Interestingly, there's a curious exception right in the middle of this era. Orphan's Benefit, released later in 1941, reverted Mickey back to his classic flat ears. Why? Well, because it was a shot-for-shot remake of a 1934 black and white cartoon, just with updated designs and color, ear design and all. I actually made an entire video about this fascinating one-off remake. The link is in the description if you'd like to check that out. By 1947, with Mickey's delayed date, the dimensional ears quietly disappeared, and animators returned to Mickey's iconic flat circles. Simpler to draw, easier to recognize, and ultimately more enduring. By the way, if you're enjoying this look at Mickey's ever-changing design, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. I've got deep dives into other fascinating moments in Disney history, so don't miss out. As Mickey entered the 1950s, his design was subtly refined once again. His body became slimmer, his head slightly smaller in proportion to his iconic round ears, and his overall appearance took on a more youthful, childlike quality. These changes likely reflected an effort to make Mickey more relatable to the growing audience of children watching television, especially with the debut of the Mickey Mouse Club in 1955. In many of the animated intros and segments for the Mickey Mouse Club, Mickey is often shown with prominent eyebrows, though they're sometimes absent in specific animations. This variability shows how his design was still being fine-tuned for different contexts. This redesign also made Mickey easier to animate for television, where tighter budgets meant simpler, cleaner character models. These were much more preferred. But even with these changes, Mickey's signature traits, his gloves, his cheerful face, and of course, those unmistakable ears, remained at the core of his design. By the 1970s and 80s, Mickey Mouse had largely stepped away from theatrical shorts. His last one, The Simple Things, had been released back in 1953. But even without new cartoons, Mickey remained front and center in Disney's brand, appearing in television specials, merchandise, and across the theme parks. During this period, his design actually circled back to something more familiar, a return to the classic look from the 1940s. His proportions were steadier, his eyes featured the white ovals introduced by Fred Moore, and the exaggerated features of the Mickey Mouse Club era were toned down. This gave Mickey a timeless, consistent look that matched the nostalgic image that many audiences had of him. Rather than experimenting with bold new styles, the focus was on keeping Mickey recognizable and iconic, essentially freezing his design as the definitive Mickey for a new generation. And have no fear, I am working on a video about the one-of-a-kind Mickey Mouse short, Runaway Brain. So stay tuned for that. Mickey Mouse officially stepped into the world of CGI animation with the 2004 direct-to-video special Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas. This marked the first time Mickey was rendered in full 3D computer animation, giving him a soft, rounded look with expressive facial rigging and smooth movement, very different from his classic hand-drawn designs. This style carried over just 2 years later into the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse in 2006, a preschool series on the Disney Channel that introduced Mickey to a whole new generation. His design in these shows was simpler for younger audiences, brighter colors, and a consistently cheerful tone. These 3D versions stuck around for over a decade, continuing in shows like Mickey Mouse Roadster Racers and later versions of the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Before Mickey's most radical design hit television screens, he took a nostalgic detour in the Oscar-nominated short Get a Horse. Released in 2013 alongside Frozen, this innovative short paid tribute to Mickey's earliest days, specifically the design seen in the Barn Dance in 1929. The short cleverly blended black and white hand-drawn animation with full-color CGI, allowing Mickey to literally burst through the screen into a modern three-dimensional world. It was a celebration of Mickey's history and a showcase of how far animation had come. For many fans, it was a delightful surprise to see the original mischievous Mickey in action again, even if only for a few minutes, before his next big makeover. In 2013, Disney gave Mickey Mouse one of his most dramatic redesigns yet. This wasn't just a visual update, it was a total reimagining of the character's look, tone, and personality. The redesign came under the direction of Paul Ruddish, a veteran of Cartoon Network's golden age of animation, known for his work on Dexter's Laboratory, The Powerpuff Girls, and Samurai Jack. Ruddish's influence is easy to spot. The new Mickey Mouse shorts embraced a squashed and angular art style, exaggerated facial expressions, and rubbery, hyper-expressive movement. The humor often leaned into surrealism and slapstick, sometimes approaching the chaotic energy of shows like Ren and Stimpy. It was a bold departure, but also a return to form. This Mickey was mischievous, unpredictable, and wildly expressive, just like he had been in his earliest black and white appearances. Visually, the design echoed the 1929 to 1931 era with simplified features, a more compact body, and a flatter aesthetic that gave animators room to play. The redesign struck a chord. These shorts gained a strong following and solidified this version of Mickey as the face of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, making the jump from TV to theme park attraction. He now appears in signage, merchandise, and the ride itself, cementing this stylized version of Mickey as part of the character's evolving legacy. From his humble beginnings in Plane Crazy to his ultra-modern makeover in the 2010s, Mickey Mouse has worn many faces, but he's always been unmistakably Mickey. Whether drawn by hand or rendered in CGI, whether silent or singing, Mickey has remained Disney's most recognizable and beloved character. If you'd like to see where Mickey's journey really began and the betrayal that led Walt Disney to create him in the first place, click here to watch my deep dive into Steamboat Willie. It's a story full of setbacks, soundtracks, and one gutsy gamble that changed animation forever.